Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hashtag event icons. We are back again. It's Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. Best time of the day. And it's your time to ask questions. And today we are talking about sustainable thinking. I must admit, this is not a topic I am the most versed in. So the knowledge bomb's about to be dropped. Will be amazing, and I'm about to get some knowledge dropped by some amazing event professionals. We're going to be talking about what does it really mean to be sustainable, and take a hard look at it. I think we have some two really amazing experts here, one of which has been on the show before, which we'll introduce her in just a little bit, but the other is a newcomer, but oh my gosh, he was telling me why he was here and how he has gotten involved in sustainability, and I think you guys will be impressed for sure. So joining us today is Chance Thompson from the Salt Lake Palace and Convention Center in Utah, and Tracy Stuckrath, who you may also know from episode 96, Staying Healthy, this year. We're going to be getting into a little bit more about sustainable thinking, but before we do that, let's drop that intro and get ready to rock.
It's Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, so you know what that means. It's time for another episode of Hashtag EventIcons, presented by Endless Events, the show where you get to ask the icons of the events industry anything. Use the question panel on the webinar to submit your questions, or you can hop on Twitter. Submit your questions with Hashtag EventIcons. We'll be answering your questions live during the entire show. Before we get started, the more people we have watching, the better conversation we can have. So please help share Hashtag EventIcons on Twitter and Facebook. Just tell your friends to watch at www.event-icons.com. Now, without any further delay, this is Hashtag EventIcons.
Oh yeah, welcome everybody. And you know what? I was so selfish during that intro. I didn't even get a chance to welcome my co-host for today, the amazing Brand Cougar in the house. Brand Kruger in the house. Make some noise. Brand, you're on site today.
I am on site. I am backstage, and so far the internet's holding up. So
live looking.
It's gonna be a fun one.
It's a good day. It's a good day.
People coming back and forth. There'll be road cases flying.
I love it. For those who don't know, we all have real day jobs. We don't just podcast for a living. So we are real event professionals too, just so you guys know. All right. So I want to jump right on in. I'll introduce Chance since we got a chance to talk, no pun intended, sorry, a little bit before the show. And then Brant, you know Tracy very well. So I'll give you a chance to introduce Tracy as well. But Chance, dude, you started like me from the bottom, and now you're here, and you had this whole full circle thing that happened when it came to starting in the events industry, wanting to do something sustainable, and then now get to do sustainable things related to events. Can you tell everyone what got you to here today, and tell me about the startings from college to basically one of the leading thought leaders when it comes to sustainability events?
Sure. Yeah. So it's been a kind of, full circle is a good way to put it. And I'm actually going to take you back before college. So I'm from Montana in a small little town called Potomac. And I actually had a teacher back in, in 2002, 2003, science teacher that taught us about climate change and kind of piqued that interest. And so it's something I always was into and cared about. And so when I got to college, I eventually ended up studying ecology and wanted to study species and wildlife and how they're impacted by climate change and how to help them survive. And then my good buddy, Mike Wilkins, was DJing our high school's prom and invited me to come along. And it went so well with the guy that we worked with, Jason DeCunzo was his name, and the equipment that he had, that we just kind of randomly started a business. And we had so much fun doing it, and we dove into it, and it really took off very quickly. And in our third year, we did 50 weddings. Things were going really well. And then I had some good opportunities pop up and come into hotels. And so left that venture, went off into hotels for a while, and then kind of stayed connected to events, doing some, BEO type work and, some of the small stuff we were doing. And then I started working for a luxury hotel, and eventually became a little woken, I guess.
I like the irked.
I just noticed how much excess and how much waste there was And so it was something I was always talking about, and it was on my mind. And my fiance kind of gave me the nudge, and she's like, "Hey, you need to be in sustainability somehow. Like, can we do it in sports or like in events and tie it together?" And I kind of laughed initially. And then I applied for a job here at the Salt Palace, doing some guest relations work. And in my interview, it was mentioned that sustainability was out there as a couple of side projects. And so I was just like, oh, wow, I need this job. Got to have this job. And so it worked out, and we started on some of those side projects, one of them being the Apex certification that I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about. And 2.5 years later, that is now my position and one of our primary focuses as a business, and one of our core missions. So it is interesting how things work. It's all come together quite well. So and thank you for having me. And thanks for Tracy jumping on with me as well. It's excellent.
No, we're so excited here. But before I'm gonna let Brant introduce Tracy, you just won an award. And can you describe what happened? This is a big deal. This is like a really big deal. Can you describe this sustainable innovation award that you just like literally 2 weeks ago? Something like that?
Yeah, it did just happen. So when we were about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we were in the process of applying for our 5 Apex certifications here out of Salt Lake. And I can talk about kind of the uniqueness of that. But and I had come across this award, and a couple of people in the industry had suggested we apply for it. And we hadn't actually gotten the Apex certifications yet. And while we were doing a lot of sustainable things, we were still building a lot of our process. And so I decided to wait. And we got the certifications in June of last year. And then we applied for it this year. And I think it was March when we submitted for the award. And we won. And I know it was very, very cool. So the award is the IMEX and EIC Innovation and Sustainability Award. And it's a partnership between IMEX, the Frankfurt component of their show, so their annual show in Frankfurt, and then the Events Industry Council as the one of the primary creators of the APEX standards, and a very sustainable, striving association in our industry. Went together, partnered together to create this award, and they awarded it to us because we are the first destination in Salt Lake to have 5 APEX certifications, and we did it as one partnership approach to it amongst Salt Palace Convention Center, Mountain America Expo Center, so our 2 S&G properties here, and then also our CVB partner in Visit Salt Lake, our exclusive caterer in Utah Food Services, and then our preferred AV partner in PSAV here in Salt Lake. That plus the kind of creative and large impact we found with our community donation program is what won us the award. So, we were awarded that just in the last couple of weeks in Frankfurt, and it was very exciting, very fun, and we are very thankful for having received it.
Well, congratulations! Congratulations! We're definitely excited to have you here.
Excited to be here.
Absolutely. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Tracy Stuckrath, who, Tracy, amazing person, meeting planner extraordinaire, works with organizations worldwide to create safe and inclusive food and beverage environments for event participants, employees, guests. Does that pretty much cover it?
I think so, yeah. How not to kill your people with the food that you serve them.
Exactly. I mean, and as we joke about it, it's not a serious, I mean, it's a very serious thing. I mean, it can absolutely happen. And I've unfortunately seen it happen at an event. So it's very much so. Tell us a little bit about yourself, for those of you that didn't get a chance to see the last episode, kind of how you got into the event space and what it is that you do there.
In the event space in general, I plan.
Maybe relate to sustainability since she did the
sure.
Okay, sustainability, condom awareness week in college. I don't know if those two things go together, but what really sustainability, I took actually Nancy and the training class a couple of years ago from Meet Green, and loved it. But what sealed the deal for sustainability for me, I've been a meeting planner since 1990, but what sealed sustainability for me was going to the World Expo in Milan in 2015. I actually was at IMEX Frankfurt, came in early, and that was happening. And I'm like, Shaunazuko, we're getting in a car and we're driving to Milan. And because there was the entire theme of the expo was food. And I'm like, I have got to be here at this convention or at this event, which you need 5 days to go through the World Expo, not 5 hours. But the first thing that happened, the first exhibit that you walk through was all about food waste. And I was blown away. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, this has to relate to what I'm doing. And, around dietary needs and food allergies and different things like that. And it really does. And so I think the past 2.5 years, I've really kind of been pushing that. I'm actually doing a session next week at MPI WEC called Wasted, on how much food waste that we have in the industry and how we can do that. But it also ties into dietary restrictions, because if you don't ask about dietary restrictions, you're planning a meal for Will and Brant and Chance that they can't eat. You've just wasted your budget, and you've just $50 of your budget or however much it is, and you've wasted food. So how those things really tie into each other. And I think it's super important how food and sustainability work together. So that's my sustainability aspect, Will, and getting into the industry.
I love it. Can you tell everyone a little bit about like I think we talked about 96. Never mind. People, if go back and check out episode 96, it's full of awesome things. So we talked a little bit about what got you both into sustainability. One thing that I want to dive into is, how do you see the importance of sustainability to events? Why should people really care, right? Because some people think like, it doesn't really apply to me. It's not my local community. Do I really make this big enough impact? Like, talk a little bit about like, why is this really important to the events industry? Why should people care? Go ahead, Chance.
Yeah. I think it can apply no matter how big or small, right? So one of the things, that we really saw happening is that before I got here, there was a build. There was, the recycling containers obviously had been in a long time. There was a big solar project, and we can certainly dive into a little bit of information about our solar array on our building too. So that was done. So we had a little bit of backing from some of our higher leadership, but what we identified was a big missing piece in the operational component. So when you talk about big infrastructural type, waterless fixtures, urinals, toilets, low flow, things like that, or big LED transitions, those are all the things that are kind of above, what, someone that's just in the meeting industry in some capacity, it might not be as of interest to them. But when you talk about operationally, it's something that impacts us every day. And it really is, you come into that triple bottom line consideration and you look at the people, planet, and profit components of this, it only really makes sense to try and build a circular economy. So meaning that if we have something come into a venue like ours, if you're a meeting planner and you're bringing all these materials, do you want to bring just, the entire warehouse, or do you want to bring, the things you need for that event? And then once the event takes place and it comes to an end, if you can reuse that stuff and keep it inside of your circle and under your control, it can save you money. If not, if it's too much to ship it around, move it around, then why not benefit people a bit, right? And donate it out to the community that you're impacting, that you're coming into. And I'm sure Tracy can speak to food waste. If you're wasting food, you're probably wasting your wallet and your bank account too, right? Mm-hmm. So I think you have to look at it very practically and always look for the business case in these things. We so often see clients, throwing away these, just massive decor pieces that, they cost, dollars and dollars and dollars, right? Thousands. And it's like, why wouldn't you try to keep that and reuse it? It would be cheaper in a lot of cases to rent a storage unit in the city that you come back to every year and put it back into the building. There's just things we just don't think about because we're a throwaway society. Now, there are other times, because we are a throwaway society, that it is cheaper to landfill things and just buy it new. That certainly does happen. And so that's what people like me and Tracy and so many in the industry are trying to figure out a solution to help fix. But I think it's something that is very tangible, very applicable to everybody, because there's a lot of areas to look at cost savings. And then, of course, it builds a great story to tell. And we all love marketing material, right? Sometimes people are afraid to talk about sustainability, or they feel like they're bragging, or they're being like ingenuine or something. But no, like these are stories we should be telling, and market it, sell yourself, be proud of the things that you're doing. So marketing material is universal for sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tracy. So you talked a little bit about how you're obviously focusing on food waste.
Mm-hmm.
Why should people care about their food waste? I mean, it seems a little bit out of some people's control, right? But, I'm sure we'll talk about ways they can be in control. Like, what are your thought process on like why, other than obviously the good story and obviously the triple bottom line, why should people care?
I mean, it's wasting your money, and I mean, and it's wasting food. I mean, there's this, I was speaking in Shanghai a couple of years ago, and this lady from Spain was telling me about how she was at the back of the house of a meeting, and the server was throwing away full filet mignons, just throwing them in the trash. And this server was crying. And the woman was like, "Why are you crying?" She's like, "I can't afford to buy this piece of meat for myself at home with what I make here, and you're having me as an employee throw this away because it was uneaten and was not cooked, and you've deemed it inedible." And she was that kind of changed that meeting planner's perspective, but it changed my perspective a lot more in a completely different way too. So how can you? And I remember being at a convention last year. I'm like, they didn't communicate where the breaks were. And so there were buffets and buffets of muffins and danishes that all of the event attendees were on a different floor, and the break was down in another room. So you just spent thousands of dollars on muffins that are going to waste. And because they've been put out onto the event floor, they can't be donated. So they're just trashed. And so we've got to, it seems common sense, but it's things that we as meeting planners, and we don't want things to go to waste. We don't want that chafing dish to be empty when somebody comes through it. But isn't it cool to always actually get I got the last scoop of that banana pudding, right? I'm like, nobody else can have it. Why not pitch that whole idea? Because that last scoop of banana pudding, you're the lucky girl that got it. You can't eat
something
banana
to be
pudding.
Said for wanting more, right?
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. So, and then that food is it's kind of going to a landfill, and where can you, it's just being dumped into the garbage can instead of being utilized for somebody who's going hungry or can't afford to have it. But it's also, you just wasted your own budget on your event. And could you're whining, because we meeting planners do whine because we don't have money for this or we don't have money for that. If you could have saved a little bit of that money from whining on the muffin, got to have this muffin, you could have paid a little bit more for a keynote speaker, or you could have gotten that, throwaway tchotchke that you wanted, that everybody's going to throw away anyways, but, use it somewhere else to make a bigger impact.
Or come back to your finance director and say, look how much money I saved, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So, and I'm working on an event right now. I'm like, oh my God. And instead of doing this, I'm like going direct to somebody instead. And I've just shaved off $10,000 off your budget because I did this instead, and looking at it differently. And I'm guilty of being one of those meeting planners that just ordered it off the menu. This is what I ordered, but I'm not that person anymore. I sold my house October and 85% of my belongings. So I'm really streamlined in my life right now. So
I've got about 8 different questions based on the last 2 things you guys just said. But
okay.
Real quick, Tracy, on what you were just talking about, what popped into my head there was, I know there are Good Samaritan laws regarding retail stores donating expired food, quote unquote expired, right? That prevents them from, because that's like the urban legend is that like Target can't donate that stuff because they'll get sued. or something like that if somebody gets it. And there's actually laws, most places have laws in place that allow that. So you can't get sued for that. Is there something similar that you know of as far as events goes, where if we were to donate that leftover food, that you can go to a good place and not worry about any kind of weird repercussions from it?
Liability. Yeah.
Liability.
You do have to take that into consideration for sure. And you have to make sure that your food is time and temperature controlled. And that means that any food that's in the back of the house, if it's time and temperature controlled according to all food safety regulations, then you can then donate that. And Good Samaritan regulations would apply as well. But working with organizations that are skilled at collecting that food and then dispersing it out is who you want to connect with as well. But you definitely want to do that, Chance, correct me if I'm wrong, when you're contracting with your venue or at whatever venue you're doing, so that you're not trying to do it at the last minute, and that you do actually have the right partners in place to make sure that happens.
So, you look at a facility like ours, right? We're going to turn over from one event to the next very quickly. Mm-hmm. So luckily, we, as I mentioned, have a caterer that is Apex certified. That is a Clean Utah company and has really been working on this for a long time. So we have that in place kind of as a default, but many places don't, or are just kind of starting to experiment with it. So, meeting planners definitely have an opportunity to start opening that dialogue and saying, hey, we want to be very conscious of our food waste. How can we do it safely? So yes, the Good Samaritan laws that have been referenced, those are a pretty protective umbrella of laws. I think it went into effect when Bill Clinton was in office, I believe, and Bill Samaritan wrote this law that as long as there's no negligence, then you're off the hook for liability. So now, to be a good steward and be responsible, it is all about storage. So when somebody comes into our facility, we have all this food. What Utah Food Services does is they keep it warm or cold in the back. They serve what is needed, right? And then they try to avoid all that leftover stuff that sits out on the floor. Those extra full buffets that get refreshed with 10 minutes left in a meeting. I mean, why are we doing that? And then if they can keep it cold when the show is over, then they can have a partner, and our partner is Catholic Community Services in Salt Lake does this for us. They will come by and pick it up, and they are able to maintain temperature control and then deliver it out to feed the hungry in Salt Lake. But you can imagine in our building, that has to happen quickly, right? Because Utah Foods needs their storage. They need that space for the next event that's coming in. So for us, we have to do it quickly. If it's a facility that hasn't done this before, you need to start that conversation way in advance, because they need to line up the donation partners is just as much a factor in this as the actual coordination between the meeting planner and the caterer. That caterer to where it's going to go in the community is key, because it's got to get out of the building. Right. Besides, you don't want it sitting there too long anyway, because cold storage will only save it for so long too. So definitely want to be diligent and conscious of it. But it is, if you are not, showing gross negligence, you are protected. Once that food leaves the door, the liability transfers to whoever's handling the food and serving it to the next person. So, you do want to do it up front, because making it happen at the last minute, and I did that in an event a year and a half ago. It's hard, is that person, and especially if your event is on the weekend, trying to get somebody to come and do that. You don't want that situation, then everything's going to throw away. And, but it lets you plan, but you also get venues. Jim Spellows works with Rocket and Wrap It Up. And they were working with a group, and finally the meeting planner was pushing it. And the hotel finally came back and said, please don't make us do this. We don't want to do it. And so you need to have that conversation when you're sourcing your venue to say, this is our plan. This is what we want to do. Are you an organization that's willing to work with us to do this? Because we want to give back to the community and we want to reduce food waste. So how can you help us? And I'm glad you mentioned that, Tracy, how the reaction was, we don't want to do it. because, and this may at first sound a little like pie in the sky kind of thing, or like optimistic thinking. But I can tell you from experience, sustainability is an incredibly contagious thing. When you start talking about it and people start seeing that there's new and creative and fun ways to do things, it really starts to tumble and move and shake. And so here, we started with this idea of, well, okay, we kind of want this Apex thing, but we're just looking at it as the Salt Palace. What if we brought in a few of our partners to do it? And then all of a sudden we had this 35-member green team, 5 organizations, and we spent 4 or 5 months working closely together, and it created this bond and newfound partnership for our organization as a whole too, not just sustainability related. And so if you start those conversations with people, this whole sustainability thing has a way of sparking something new and giving you another opportunity to connect and plan. And so if you do it in advance, they're going to be much more open to having conversations about it. And so, okay, that makes sense. Then maybe we won't have to spend as much time, cleaning out the buffets and things. Let the attendees clean them out, right? Let them eat the food. And then you have somebody come and pick them up. We don't have to spend as much time transporting the food waste to our compactor, because food waste weighs just a little bit. It's kind of heavy. So you can avoid some of that potentially. And there's all these little things that people start to realize, but you can only get there if you talk about it and plan for it. If you do it last minute, it's like, no, we need to default to our standard practice. We don't have time for this. And that's totally understandable, of course.
Yeah. Brant, that was just one question. What are your other 7?
well, before we get into
7
that,
more.
Facebook's blowing up. We've got lots of people asking a lot of questions. So we want to remind everybody, if you want to ask a question, feel free to use the Q&A portion of the app or use the chat, jump it in there. Or if you're joining us on Facebook, just throw it in there and they'll relay it to us. But Eric Prosperos joining us on Facebook. He says, what's up? We got a couple questions in. Before we get to those, Chance, you mentioned a little bit ago, kind of the same question that I just asked Tracy on the food side, but about set pieces, decor, and things like that. And one of the great points that someone brought up, and I already scrolled by, unfortunately, I missed who it was, talked about donating those to local theaters. And I think that's a fantastic idea, because theater companies are notorious for reusing stuff. So anytime—
Notorious or glorious?
Both.
Yeah.
Both. Yeah. So, they're really good at reusing wood and steel and things like that. And there's a lot of theater companies that I can think of just in Minneapolis that would jump at the chance to get half the stuff that gets built and thrown away for events. So that was a really great point. And I'm sorry I didn't catch you through it in there. Do you have any other tips like that? So like we talked about the reuse, the sending of the food afterwards. What can we do about set decor, those kinds of things? So
I could talk about this for hours, because this
good thing we have a platform for you to do that.
This piece is kind of our it's near and dear to our hearts here. So before I got here, we had an employee action committee that had started a very small effort to build some community partners for donation. And so we were building out, Habitat for Humanity. We had some local thrift shops, some summer camps and various things. And so when we started looking at the Apex certification and kind of the waste management piece, we're like, well, this is the key to it all. And it's better to donate, first before even going to the recycling component. So I have tons and tons of examples, but I will mention just a few. So the first one, to your theater comment. So we have a large show every year that comes in called doTERRA, and they're a essential oils company, and they're very, very big. It's 40,000 people that come into our facility every year. It's actually our largest client now. And luckily, they are a premier partner for us on sustainability. And in 2017, September, they donated, I think we captured 44,000 pounds of material and kept it out of the landfill. So they're a massive chunk of our donation efforts for last year. But they had 4 semi-truck fulls of these really cool like rolling hill pieces, but they were big pieces. And so our event manager asked me, like, hey, can we, do you want these? I was like, yep, we'll take them. And she kind of looked at me. She's like, really? I'm like, yeah, absolutely. And the first thing I thought about was theater, because they're green rolling hills. So what we did was we built out a day after the event and just had theater companies, local school theater programs, all these different places come by and grab these things. We had people showing up with rented U-Hauls and trailers. We had people come back for second loads. And one of them, it was Highland Junior High out in Ogden, which is North Salt Lake, she estimated, I think she said that they thought it saved them like $2,000 on design pieces for Macbeth. And as a small, local school theater program, I mean, that's huge, huge, huge. And so that was an incredible effort. And then the other one, and this is the one I'm most excited about because it's about to come kind of full circle, is we had the Flooring America show come in last year, and they donated a lot of really good reusable carpet and hardwood flooring. But they gave us these small carpet samples, like you'd see in Home Depot, those big boards that have all those little squares on them. And they had all these, and they're like, we need these things. We have these. Is there something we can do with them? And I was like, man, I don't know. And then an idea occurred to me, I don't know, a couple of weeks before the event. I was like, what about art? What about an artist or something? And so we have an artist, Chad Farnes, who put a duct tape piece in our building, this beautiful mural made out of duct tape. And I was like, he's pretty creative. I wonder if he could do it. So I reached out to him, and he goes, oh, wow, that's so perfect. I've been looking for something to make a picture mosaic out of. And so we donated the carpet to him. And this is what I'm most excited, is that he's going to build this picture mosaic out of a strong woman figure in American history. Right now, we think that it's going to be Seraph Young, who was the first woman to vote and did so in Utah. And Utah has had equality issues, in the past of our state, and has come so far on this. And so to have this be this social message that's going to be a piece of it. And then what we're looking to do is bring that piece back to the Salt Palace and house it in our building and
That's
show
awesome.
the circular economy piece of the whole scope. So, and then of course, the client is going to have this amazing story to tell and have an idea for what to do with these things going forward. And then the other piece, just quickly, that we just got online is textiles are a big problem in our industry. Linens, banners, flags, signage too, not as much a textile, but that's a hard signage, a big problem too. But we have started donating out our banners to two different things. So one is trying to do like banners to bags. There's a company called Rareform, which I'll include in the show notes as well, that does this on a larger scale. And I think they're actually on Shark Tank, but they do beautiful work. And they can take vinyl banners from events and they can make them into tote bags, backpacks, duffel bags. I've even seen like custom, almost like leather working out of hard vinyl to make them into like wallets and like all kinds of cool stuff.
Wow.
And then the other one, and I'll include pictures of some of this stuff in the show notes, is our local community college has a sustainable fashion program. And their lead, Amy Royer, she made a beautiful, almost kind of like a kimono like gown out of some of our banners, and then a beautiful like dress underneath. She actually, there's a picture of her holding open this like this kind of kimono looking thing, and you can see the like time and date on the banner, and it's so cool. And it's hidden because on the front side it's this beautiful like orange and yellow kind of gown dress robe looking thing. And so, materials management is a huge piece. And it is what, it goes a long ways because it's what helped win us this award. We had I think the total was 240,000 pounds of donation material in 2017, which is just, it's huge. And we still have plenty to do, a lot of work to do to get higher than that. Brant, it's critically important, and it's fun, and it creates, again, a great story to tell. It's essential.
One thing that I'm doing is in an event that I'm doing in a couple of weeks in Orlando, tailgate theme, I'm buying 16 pop-up tents. And I'm like, my client doesn't need 16 pop-up tents. I'm like, maybe keep one or two. I'm going to find a local youth sports team, or league that could use those pop-up tents and our whole theme is tailgating. So it just goes perfectly with the sports theme. It's like, and here we're going to donate these to these youth sports that needs these tents, and they don't need, it's $80, but that's $80 out of a small organization's budget.
Mm-hmm.
So
I was just thinking to myself, man, like this episode of just chock full of ideas could be like a yearly episode where we just drop like all these ideas. It is literally, it's like I have so many questions. I just love where you guys are going. I literally just want you guys to talk about all the ideas you have all day long. We have a lot of audience questions coming in. Obviously, everyone's really fascinated about this topic. First, shout out to Sammy Allen. I think it's Sammy Allen or Sam Allen, who says this is a fabulous session, by the way. So smiley face to all of you. I actually have a little bit of a selfish question, which I think a couple of people probably have out there too, is can you really quick chance, can you describe what does Apex mean and what is involved? You mentioned it a ton of times, these standards, these certifications, everything like that. Like what is it?
So Tracy laughs because she's in this with me. So the Apex, originally when they were formed, they were called the Apex ASTM standards, Sustainable Event Standards. And they were created by the Green Meetings Industry Council, which is a piece of what used to be called the Convention Industry Council. So they've rebranded, they've kind of merged, and they're now the Events Industry Council. And instead of being a separate thing, they've ingrained sustainability into kind of their core being, and it's a pillar. One of their 4 pillars is sustainability initiative. And they are trying to be kind of the authoritative resource on it in the industry. And the standards were created originally to help kind of shift and move the needle for how to be and provide a framework for how to be sustainable in the industry. So they're split into 2 sides. There's the supplier side, and then there is the meeting planner side. So the meeting planner kind of stands on its own, and it encompasses all the different things that are involved in being a supplier. So suppliers can be venues, they can be food and beverage companies, they can be exhibit managers, they can be AV companies, of course, production companies, transportation companies. So there's 8 different kind of categories that suppliers fall into. And then within each one of the standards, like the categories, so for venue, for example, so for the Salt Palace, there are 8 aspects underneath that. And there's things like staff management policy, energy management, water management, air quality, community partnerships, procurement, so you're purchasing as well, and also some communication pieces and some other things in there. And they provide a very robust list of different requirements. And so what you do is you build out a program that satisfies all these different things. You show proof that you're doing these things. So like for the Salt Palace, for example, we need to show proof of our energy tracking. We need to show how we're tracking our waste, our recycling, our donation, our food components, all the energy and water and all these other different things. And then you apply for this certification, and you can get levels 1, 2, 3, or 4. So level 1 is what we achieved on our first go round, and it's a certification that you can renew every 2 years, but you can renew at a more aggressive level. So we're going for level 2, and we will apply for that in June of 2019. And it right now has been a very, very big certification. The group that came together and created these things really wanted to make great impact. But one of the things that we found is they're a little complicated. The total documents is like 400 and something pages. So Tracy and I are both serving as team leaders on the rewrite component of these standards. So we are actually reworking them and adjusting them to make them more approachable and more adoptable. And so the new standards, they will be renamed, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say or talk about too much of that yet. So I'm going to keep that one close to the vest, but they are going to become much more approachable. And I for one, am so encouraged and excited by what it will give the industry, because I think it will truly give a framework and almost a guide, like just a walking guideline for how to be more sustainable in whatever particular area you're in. So yeah. That's exciting.
Yeah, and we're for that rewrite. If anybody wants to serve on any committee on a specific aspect, let us know, because we're
still working. Yeah,
we're still working on it, and really kind of just getting started on the food and beverage aspect too. And I'm actually excited because I'm actually adding a whole level of the food allergy aspect to it because of the asking the questions and how do you ask and all of that. But it is looking at them, I think Tahira said it the other day, when you look at it, feel like you need to be a scientist to understand them. So one of the things that we're trying to do with the rewrite is to make them readable and understandable and doable so that you can attain it, and you can say, hey, this is what we have done for our event, and feel good about that too, because you've reached a certain level. So, because I think it's very, very important. And as it relates to food and beverage, I mean, the Events Industry Council, the number that I'm going to use is from a couple of years ago, but we spend, now the number just escaped me, billions of dollars on food and beverage. And, you know, if actually it's like $46 billion a year, meeting planners only in the US spend on food and beverage. And if you take the UN statistics of wasting 30%, that's $21 billion. $21 billion of food and beverage that's wasted a year. And if you have that much money to save on food and beverage, you know, think about in the States, it's 30 to 40% of food is wasted. And that includes meetings and events. So if you're spending $100,000 on food and beverage right now, you're going to waste $40,000 of that. So how can you minimize that cost and utilize that money somewhere else, or add better food and beverage, you know, create a better program versus putting out 25 different pieces of food, you know, because you want to feed everybody different types of food.
So Tracy, I actually just came across some numbers. They're not as specific to what you were, but they are from the EIC. So the United Nations, their food and agricultural component, says that 1/3 of our food is wasted every year. $680 billion lost every single year. That's staggering. I mean, it's staggering. And here in Utah, you mentioned that piece about, okay, you know, why do people care? Well, obviously the money is huge. Everybody gets dollars, but people also get hungry people on the street. In Utah, we're 1 in 5 are food insecure here and are hungry. And so it's like, we have all this food and we have all these hungry people, like, let's get it there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yep.
Why not? You know, and you gripe about the person that's standing at the corner, you know, asking you for money. And to be honest with you, and if I see that person and I usually have blueberries or some kind of food in them, I will hand them my food before I will give them money.
Yep.
And I mean, it's just, I don't care if I just bought it at Whole Foods. I'm going to give it to you because you need it. You know, I can go buy another pint of blueberries. But
Totally.
Same thing with meetings food.
You guys are like, seriously, there's so many questions and so much to cover. We only have a little bit of
Go,
time
we'll
left.
go. All right.
Tracy, you talked a little bit about like communication and communicating these to attendees. So we have an audience question from Sammy, again, asking, how do you educate delegates and attendees? You know, a lot of times people complain about food service and not getting what they want, but how can you explain the sustainable policies versus the missing muffin, for example?
And I think it's, first of all, it's communicating it out in your event plan up front and on your website, saying we're committed to reducing food waste. We will be ordering, you know, the food that we need, but we will not be ordering excessive amounts. Put it on the buffet, saying help us reduce food waste and only take what you can eat. Don't look like you've never eaten before in your life and go through the buffet. You know, take what you can eat and what you're going to eat versus doing that. Use smaller plates. But Mariella is really good about this, you know, and communicating it to it. You have to put it on the event app. You have to put it on, you know, the buffets that you're doing. Put it on your tables and talk about what you're doing. And I really think, and just kind of going back to the dietary restrictions things, you have to create an environment that's safe for people to understand that they can ask for what they need. Because if they don't tell you, they're not helping themselves, and you've just ordered a plate for them. So by providing for them, but you have to create that environment that they feel welcome and they feel comfortable in providing that. But you also have to work with your food service providers at the same time.
So Will,
go ahead.
If I can add to that, if we have a second. So I'm glad that you mentioned the communication piece and making people feel welcome, and also Mariella. So Mariella McAraith is the Director of Industry Advancement for the Events Industry Council, and she leads their sustainability efforts. So I'm fortunate to sit on the Sustainability Committee for the EIC, with her, and they provide a ton of great, infographics and all kinds of white papers and case studies and things out there for people to take a look at and use and utilize. But the communication piece of all of this is so super key. And there's an opportunity here to find a little bit more balance in things. I've started seeing some sustainability like related conferences, actually starting to see people going like with vegan and vegetarian options as their main course.
Yep.
But what they're doing is they're communicating that to people and saying, hey, we have some goals around sustainability for our show. This is why we're doing this. So that way you don't have somebody showing up on the other end, because, America, especially, we're a huge carnivore and omnivore society. And so you don't want to throw it the other direction and kind of off-put them, right? And so it's that communication piece of letting people know, hey, we aren't going to have this option here is kind of why, or come up with a creative and have, some sort of offering for them as well, so they feel most welcome. Because as somebody who eats a vegan kind of plant-based diet primarily, I'm often the one on that end that feels, uncomfortable or untaken care of, or there's not an option. And that's not super fun. I'm kind of used to it, but I don't, we wouldn't want to flip it to the other side and have others feel unwelcome either. So it's all about communication. It goes so far.
One way, Will, that I saw great communication was at the Vancouver Convention Center long time ago. I think it was one industry convention, but they had it on their napkins. So they printed some of their sustainability goals or their sustainability wins on napkins. And so when you picked up a napkin, you learned about the crustaceans that were underneath the building, and they had designed the building specifically because it was over water so that they wouldn't disturb the sea creatures that were underneath there. So they talk about that. And so that's another way that you can talk about it too. And in a way of, that's a fun communication method, not just putting it on your event app. And showing what you're doing and getting people involved in that as well, because the more you get your delegates involved in it too, saying, hey, this is what we're doing. And hey, by the way, we're going to donate all of our food at the end of the convention that's not eaten to this group. And I know people that have brought in those groups too, for them to say thank you, and then you build bikes, right? That's a good CSR program, that you build bikes and you bring in the kids to do that. Bring in the people that you've also, the convention center or that venue is serving food to at the end as well, to say it doesn't have to be the people that are going to eat it, but the management company or whoever's managing that organization can come in and say, this is what you've provided for us. Mm-hmm. And tweet that information out saying, hey, we donated 500 pounds of food to such and such church, and this is how many people we served, or you helped us serve. Make it a we thing, not just a, hey, we did this and you're not involved.
So guys, we're starting to get close to the end of our time. It always goes by way too fast. But we've kind of covered, we talked a lot about food. We've talked a lot about kind of stuff, material goods. One of the other big areas that kind of keeps coming up in this discussion is transportation. So I'm curious to know if you guys have any tips that you can offer regarding how we can be a little bit more sustainable when it comes to transportation, because our events world is really heavy on the carbon when it comes to flying people all over the country and all over the world. Then just the energy to get to use. I can speak to that a little bit. So it actually is one of the, it is probably the biggest impactor in regard to, the industry as a whole, because it's not just transportation of people to the events, it's the supply chain. It's transportation of food, of material, of all these other things, right? So in regard to the transportation of people, there's a couple of different things happening. So the airlines are starting to look into what's called carbon offsetting. And I'm sure most people have heard this term. And I think there's a lot of different opinions on it and how it functions. But the idea, kind of the general idea of carbon or energy offsetting, for that matter, is that you get paid as a carbon offset. If you're a carbon offset, you get paid for offsetting the equivalent
carbon to whatever it might be. So for a flight, you calculate how much carbon that flight emits, and then you buy the carbon offsets to make that neutral. And the way it makes it neutral is that it goes into renewable energy, or it goes back into some sort of sustainability offering of some kind. So like we have an energy offset program from our solar panels. We actually offered the ability for event clients to purchase those offsets and go energy neutral inside our building. And then the funding from that, the idea is to get it back into our sustainability initiatives and, back towards our solar investment or something to help further more sustainability. Like California as a state does it, you have to get some of your power from a renewable source of some kind, and offsets are one way to do it. So that's definitely an opportunity. And that's something I think that in the short term, it's a great solution, because obviously we don't have airplanes that run off of, corn or something yet. I know Richard Branson's working on it. So there's some things out there that are being worked on. But and then the other thing that I have been encouraging people to do is gamify transportation a bit. So, have people come into your event and exchange a public transit pass for a raffle ticket that gets you some sort of prize. And have that prize come from some sort of sponsorship that you built out with a partner. And so there's ways of encouraging that, to stop people from using what we're all using now is Uber and Lyft. And they are great. They're very convenient. They're very quick and easy solutions in a lot of places, but they're carbon emitting sources. There's not that many electric cars out there zipping around. And so many of our cities have great public transit. I mean, I was just in Frankfurt, and it's amazing how European cities have transit. And a lot of places in the US do as well, in Canada. And so try to do something that gets the attendees to think, oh, well, if I can win a prize, or I can, just have fun with it. Make it an Instagram campaign, take selfie from the tracks or something, and have prizes around it too. There's all kinds of things to do. Go ahead, Tracy. Yeah.
I was going to say, last week I was in Chicago for the National Restaurant Show, and I ended up at a VRBO, like 4.5 miles from the convention center. But I looked at the map, and I could take the city bus, and it was $2.50, and it was going in the opposite direction of, when you leave McCormick Center. I went this way, and everybody else was going that way to all the hotels. And so, I got back to my Airbnb so fast, where everybody else is sitting in cabs and in the shuttle buses. Sure. Because it was just a traffic log. And when I was waiting for the bus, I'm like, oh, I'm 15 minutes early. I'm not going to wait. So I walked 10 blocks in the direction the bus was going. And when it got to be 5 minutes away, because I was watching it on the tracker on my app, I'm like, oh, I'm going to stop at this station and wait to get on the bus. And it encourages exercise. So, and one of the events that I always talk about transportation wise was WEC when it was in Vancouver. And they actually, MPI WEC, for anybody who doesn't know what that means, but they got rid of the buses and they encouraged people to walk. And what they did is they actually had a shoe check instead of a coat check. You could wear your tennis shoes from your hotel to the convention center, check your tennis shoes in, and then it was more important for women, and then put your heels on. And I loved it because it encouraged that education, encouraged exercise, it encouraged walking and exploring the city that you don't get to see on a bus. But Chance, I would have loved to turn in my ticket for the bus at NRA show or the restaurant show to get something at the show, get a discounted thing from that. But, and then just relating transportation back to food, because Chance mentioned it, talking to your chefs about buying locally, not shipping it from, keeping it as close as possible to the region and to the season that you're buying it in. And it might not work really well for a 20,000 person convention, but it could work well for a small meeting in a hotel. And then, how can that find out who else is making food for, or she is making food for in that hotel at the same time you are, so he can get a bigger buy from a local farmer. And that, yeah.
Brant, I know we're running short on time, so I won't mention them in detail, but I do have a couple of carbon offset suggestions, programs to go through. So I'll include those in the show notes for people to take a look at.
Yeah, fantastic. And I wanted to mention, just because friend of the show, Hans Ettman, who was on episode 82, we were having some emails, Chance and Hans and I, regarding sustainability prior to the show. And Hans had a really amazing point that it's not a popular question, but the question that I think you really have to ask when you really want to cut down on transportation is, should we even be having this event? It's a really powerful question, that if you don't have a good reason, you don't have, don't know the goals of the event, you don't have a purpose for the event, the easiest way to save all of that, the food, the transportation, the waste afterward, is, do we even need to have this event? And I think that's just a really important question that sometimes we really should be asking.
Deep question.
Very
deep question.
Yeah.
All right, so we don't have a lot of time left, and you guys are both very busy, so I want to make sure I get you guys back to the day-to-day. So let's start to wrap up with our last two questions we always do, starting with your single best tip that you have for event planners today, whether it's related to sustainability or not. I'll let you guys drop your final knowledge bomb before we go into resources. So, Tracy, I'll let you kick it off.
My one is always ask about dietary restrictions. Don't leave it as an open-ended question. Use the check boxes and be very, very specific, because it's for somebody's safety, but it's also reducing waste.
Boom. I love it. Chance, what about you? What's your one tip?
Well, as somebody who's allergic to dairy, I very much appreciate that, Tracy.
Not that I'm clapping that you have a dairy allergy.
No, but yes, no, very much appreciated.
We need to chat then.
So yes, absolutely. So I have two things, so I'm going to meld them into one. So the two things are melded together is passionate communication. So communicating all of this, tell people why you're doing what you're doing or what you're thinking. Because until the conversation gets started, I mean, we have to start it first, because otherwise we won't go anywhere. And something that I've seen is if it matters to you, and so often it does to people, be passionate. Don't be afraid to talk about why it matters to you, what you're trying to accomplish, because happy people really have a way of rubbing off on others, and then the whole thing just starts to spiral and move and shake, and that's what we need. So talk about it and do so with excitement, definitely.
Awesome. I love that. All right. Last final question that we have for you guys.
Okay. What
are your resources you want to share? Chance has like a million resources, so he could just say like, check out all this, but anything specific you want to share that you haven't mentioned yet already, you want to make sure that we get in the show notes. Anything cool from like your favorite book you're reading today, to an app, to something that's helping you get better sleep. I'm gonna share a secret. I shouldn't do this because I'm the only one that has done this that I know of. So I'm trying to keep it close to the vest, but I care too much. I think it's fun. So something I started doing is handwritten thank you notes on an iPad and then emailing them to people, because it shows that extra touch, right? That it is handwritten. It's written with like a digital pencil on your screen. And I have a little disclaimer at the bottom that says I'm a big believer in handwritten thank yous, but I also care a lot about the environment. So I'm trying to eliminate my paper usage. And it has really like sparked some cool conversation. And people are like, how are you doing it? What app are you using? So my app of choice is GoodNotes on the iPad with an Apple Pencil. And you can also like bring in pictures and things from somebody's speaker session or, whatever it might be. You can make them creative and have some cool things. I even sometimes include like a quote or something at the end of them that I'm into at that moment. So yeah, give that a shot. It'll surprise people. It definitely does. I might have to steal that one. That's amazing.
Yes.
Tracy, what about you? Resources you got?
Resources? I don't know. I'm going to kind of something personal that I mentioned it a little while ago, is that I purged. I had an opportunity to house sit for friends. And
not like the movie Purge though, right?
I don't even know what that movie is.
Oh. Never mind.
So I sold my house and 85% of my belongings, and I have the rest of the 15% in a storage unit and in my friend's house. And it is so refreshing. And as we're talking about sustainability, it's kind of the same thing. And I had a garage sale and I made donations to the Salvation Army, and everybody, your waste is somebody else's gold in some respects. So thinking about that aspect too. And actually one of the apps, actually I do have an idea. So going to trade shows, you get all that collateral from people. I actually use, what is that app called? The Evernote. So instead of taking that collateral home with me, I actually take the Evernote app, scan it in, and add that to a folder on my Evernote saying, this is from the National Restaurant Association show. This is the vendor. This is what I learned from them. And then that way I'm throwing all that paper away in my hotel room, but I'm not taking it with me on the airplane. So, or you can do that in the show, on the show floor, and saying, I appreciate you giving me this. I'm going to let you keep it. I'm going to scan it in and take it with me that way.
Save them some money, right? People, planet, profit. Yes.
Right. Yes. Yes. So that's my little event app. Or
I'm a fan of Evernote too. By the way, I mentioned it a couple of times, but there's a ton of resources related to the Event Industry Council, Apex, guides to applying things into your events. There's a lot of things that resources that we have that we didn't mention that we could probably pen a whole episode just explaining all of them. But they'll all be in the show notes of the episode on the blog afterwards. So there's a lot of bonus content. So make sure that even if you're watching us live right now, you go and check that out because there's a lot of amazing content. And I'm going to kick it over to Brant to wrap everything up and get us away.
First and foremost, we want to thank you guys, Chance, Thompson. Why don't you let folks know where people can find out more about you and what you're up to?
Yeah, I'm going to give out my email directly because I want people reaching out. Please do. I'm lucky to work for an employer in the Salt Palace and Salt Lake County SMG that wants us to help give people resources. Plus being on the Events Industry Council Sustainability Committee, that's part of our gig in doing this. So my email is chance, CHANCE.T, as in Thompson, at saltpalace.com. And then you can also find me on LinkedIn too, just Chance Thompson on LinkedIn, and reach out to me there as well. But seriously, anything, and we'll share any Apex documents, any tools, anything and everything we can. We're happy to bring it forth. So thank you.
Nice. Well, thanks again for joining us. And Tracy, thank you so much for joining us. Where can people find out more about you and what you're up to?
My website is thrivemeetings.com. That's THRIV as in Victor E, meetings.com. You can find me on LinkedIn with Tracy Stuckrath, and my email is tracy@thrivemeetings.com. And I'm on Facebook and Twitter and all those other things.
And I should mention on social too. Yeah, we're at Salt Palace CC, 2 letters, CC, Convention Center CC. So at Salt Palace CC to see we post a lot about sustainability stuff all the time. So yes.
Yeah, and reach out to both of us if you want, if you're interested in helping rewrite some of these standards.
Yes.
We definitely want the help. We want
perspectives
from a variety of different people. Yeah. I mean, I'm a meeting planner. I don't necessarily know what goes on in the back of the House of Chance's venue at all times. So especially it relates to food and beverage. We want those perspectives. So definitely jump in if you want to help.
All right. Well, great. And obviously we want everybody to follow these guys, because if this is a topic that interests you, I think we've established these are people that know a thing or two about a thing or two when it comes to sustainability. So, man, we're definitely going to have to make this a more frequent topic. We've already run over by a few minutes. So time to wrap it up. We want to remind everybody that we're recorded live each Wednesday, 5 p.m. Eastern. You can watch behind the scenes on Facebook Live. And then the show is released every Tuesday on iTunes, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, or wherever your favorite podcast app is. But the best way to join us is to sign up at event-icons.com. You can go on there, you get the show notes, you get the links, you get all the resources that are shared, and you get the links to the Zoom meeting so that you can join us live and ask our icons the questions live straight into their brain. It's actually broadcast directly into their brains. Many people don't know that.
It doesn't hurt.
Yeah, it doesn't hurt much at all. So we hope you'll join us there. That's the best way to do it. We also want to know what you think. Join us on Twitter. Use the hashtag EventIcons. Tell us who you want to see on the show, the icons of the event industry, the topics you want to know about, and let us know what you want to see on Event Icons. We hope you'll join us next time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for joining us for another amazing episode of #EventIcons. To catch the transcription and all of the resources mentioned, head to www.helloendless.com/blog. This week's episode will be posted and available by next Tuesday. Also, let us know what you thought about this week's episode. Share your biggest takeaway and join the social conversation. Sponsored by Little Bird Told Media. Just tag your post with hashtag EventIcons. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you again for joining us. We'll see you next Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern, right here on hashtag EventIcons.
They're all on the desktop. I'll be right back.